Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and today we welcome to the studio Morgan Halem from OPPO. Thank you for joining me, Morgan.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much for having me today.
Now, your first time on the show, so we probably need to fill listeners in on where you fit into this big, wide world of technology in New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually the managing director for OPPO New Zealand. I'm responsible for the daily operations and the strategy for OPPO New Zealand.
Oh, fantastic. And how big is the OPPO team here in New Zealand now? Because it's been, it must have been around a couple of years since, the brand's been here, and, things have certainly been ramping up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're quite lucky that the brand has been very welcome in New Zealand. So now as of the start of the year, we actually a team of 23.
Oh, that's great.
And that's including everyone, including after sales, but also customer service as well that we have in-house in New Zealand. Good
stuff. We'll look forward to diving in and talking about what's new on the OPPO front during the podcast, including the new Find X2, which we have here in our hands. This is the very first OPPO Find X2 to arrive in New Zealand, a pre-production sample. So nice to be able to have a little bit of a look at that and a chat about that during the show.
Absolutely.
But let's jump in. I think this week, and we've been talking about COVID-19, coronavirus for a number of weeks now, but there's really been a big shift, particularly here in New Zealand, and since our last episode, certainly, and you'd probably say even in the last 3 or 4 days, where things have really ramped up. I think there's been clear recognition by the government here in New Zealand and in other parts of the world that we're dealing with something that is a really big deal.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's good to see. Actually, I can see from the last 4 or 5 days, a lot of businesses locally have actually ramped up their procedure and the precaution within their business. I see a lot of emails coming in to actually letting their customer know or their team members know that all the precaution they do to making sure we kind of slow down the spread in New Zealand.
Yeah. Of course, there's the flip side to where people are maybe getting a little bit annoyed. I've seen one or two tweets sort of poking fun at every single brand under the sun that has our email address is sending us an email to let us know what they're up to. But look, I would prefer that there's that sort of transparency and over communication rather than nothing. Obviously, it depends on the brand whether they have much to communicate or not, but I don't want a million emails so I can't find anything, but there are certainly some cases where this is a very helpful use of the technology and just being able to alert people to what's going on.
I agree, and I think especially we being always the further away from everybody else in the world, that we have the ability to actually learn from what everybody have experienced, and for us to taking some steps now and try to mitigate their risks, I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I got a text message this morning. It was unlabeled as to who it was from. I'll read it out if I can locate it here. So it comes from 4465 is the sender, and it says important COVID-19 update for NZ residents and next of kin. Please click link. It sort of comes across very much like some sort of phishing, dodgy communication.
Yeah.
The previous one read very similarly, but it said from Ryman Healthcare. Now, I recognised the URL format they were using. They weren't actually linking to a direct Ryman Healthcare link. So actually the sort of link that people should be very careful to click on. So I guess just an encouragement out there. We know amongst our listeners that there are people in all sorts of organisations who are responsible for these sorts of things. And just wisdom with this stuff, because we want to make it really easy for everyone, for the general public, to be able to know that they're getting information safely, and to be able to tell the difference between that and something that is something with maybe some risk attached to it, some sort of cybersecurity attack, phishing email, etc. And there is take advantage of people, right? And
I agree.
So look, good on Ryman Healthcare for the regular communications over the past about 10 days, I think, is where I've seen those coming through from them. But it would be just be pleasing for them to probably give a better URL. The URL is hubs.ly, which is or ly, which is probably they're using HubSpot or something to manage this stuff. Is my guess. They're using a tool like that, but maybe they can turn that off, especially on messages that don't communicate who they're from. And again, similar recommendations. Anyone else that's sort of playing a part in this stuff, let's make it really, really clear and safe. And look, any sending out of communications that any organisation sends, as much as possible, if you know who it is, it should that should have said, "Hi, Paul." They shouldn't just have a number for me; they should have a name,
a customizer,
and be able to wrap that up. So, because that again helps differentiate something that's really dodgy from somebody that has a bit more data.
Yep.
Not that there aren't people out there, or there aren't databases out there that have been hacked that maybe contain my name and my email address and my phone number. Unfortunately, reality. But those extra steps certainly, I think help us differentiate between what's good and what's a bit dodgy. And unfortunately, what Ryman sent on this occasion today, I would say, looks like it's actually dodgy.
Yeah. Look, luckily we, in New Zealand, government has been actually be very, very good in the communications wise. And they have actually making sure that the headline seems to be in the first point of contact. And I think they're communicating it enough daily to be able to make sure that a customer actually, people actually know where they need to contact if there's something like this happen.
Look, it's a challenging time for everyone. We're all having to move, very quickly on our feet, and for organisations maybe that haven't prepared themselves with good mechanisms for communication, or have maybe underlying issues within their technology structures, if they're going to be put to test, then now's the time where they're going to be put to test.
Absolutely.
Now, I was really pleased actually last week that to hear from one of our show partners, actually, and I should thank all of our show partners for supporting the New Zealand Tech Podcast and making this show possible. So a quick thank you to those that stand behind the show, and of course stand behind the technology sector and innovation here in New Zealand. So that's Sumo Logic, Vodafone, Spark, Vocus, HP and Samsung. Now, one of those parties, Vodafone, were quite vocal publicly, sort of tweeting and so on around the trial that they did last week. And I know they're not the only one. There are a lot of organisations doing this. I know, my team at Gorilla have been talking to a lot of the clients that we deal with around the value of going out and actually testing work from home days. So just imagine that tomorrow nobody could come into work and that was going to be the case for the next 3 months.
That's correct.
What would you do? Well, the best thing is test it now. And so it was really pleasing to see that Vodafone did their work from home drill last week, and I think it was around 1,200 of 2,000 staff that actually worked remotely on the day. And I mean, this highlights again one of the challenges, like how could an organisation operate with nobody in the office, and that may be a reality now. Vodafone, there did what are we talking about there? 60% of their team, which is a pretty large chunk.
Large people, yeah.
I wonder about the other 40%, and I'm sure that part of their thinking was, well, what's going to be the right balance? obviously the higher percentage you can have working from home, the more real world and accurate that trial will be to a real scenario where you maybe aren't able to have anybody in the office. So
and I think just Vodafone from Australia, I think I heard that from the colleague of mine. I think even HP New Zealand and also Spark New Zealand already start something similar where they're rotating the team. They split the team into two, A and B. And they're actually making sure that Team A work for a week and then Team B work for another week, and just to spread out the people amongst themselves. What they call social distancing. Which is interesting actually. But and even ourselves, we're actually taking a learning from that quite quickly. And we'll about implement something similar.
Well, anything that can be done, we've heard a lot of talk of flattening that curve, reducing the peak is good. I guess I've been sort of hopeful that actually we will, not be able to have the same sort of impact in New Zealand as in other countries. They've, talked about there not being a sort of community spread. But look, we don't know whether that will, what that will look like in New Zealand. But certainly all of these precautions have got to help reduce the pace of things. And hopefully we can avoid that sort of broad spread in the community until such time as there's some vaccine, some medication, and these things are being thrown around in different parts of the world in terms of what might be possible. I think in Australia they're testing some existing medications at the moment that they think actually can knock the virus out, which would be really, really encouraging. If they can get sufficient medication and so on once they've done that trial. So lots going on there. In fact, I should mention for those who are really interested in these discussions around COVID-19 coronavirus, we do have a new show that has so far just been streamed, but it will be available in a audio format too on the Podcast NZ Facebook page. So we've had a number, I think 3 or 4 episodes over the last 2 or 3 days, so that just bringing some discussions together. There just seem to be so many questions and things that people want to talk about. So there is that ancient. Now, also on that front, I hear that Spark are dealing with one of an offshore team, and that handles some of their customer service, who have unfortunately had to sort of shut down their operation at least for a time. So we just need to be mindful that, look, the world is a very different place today compared to what it was, even a week ago.
Absolutely.
And these sorts of things are just a genuine reality. So different organisations are going to be hit in different ways, and hopefully we can just work together to get through those.
That's the key thing, I guess.
Those challenges.
They need to start with taking care of themselves.
So great to see those work trials going on. Now, something that came up in the US was that some of the networks there, internet providers, mobile internet providers, so on, are doing some extra things to make life a little bit easier for those that can't be operating out of the office. Right. So Comcast has apparently opened up their Wi-Fi hotspots to just everybody, a sort of free-for-all.
Oh, wow, that's great.
And T-Mobile offering, or Comcast and T-Mobile offering unlimited data for a two-month period is sort of the initial announcement. And T-Mobile also offering a hotspotting capability from people's phones that are not actually paying for a hotspot capability, which I thought that's really cool. So obviously when you do that sort of thing as a provider, there can be some flow on. So if you suddenly open the floodgates, you might find performance drops off. Mm-hmm. But I think that's actually it's really cool. and obviously we know that the telcos are do listen in to the show, and thank you for those that support the show. This would be a little just a little whisper in the air of our awesome telcos in New Zealand. We'd love that to be considered, and I imagine it already has been, and it will be that balance around. Look, if you offer and open up mobile networks to be unlimited, or to give away a whole lot of data, what is the actual impact of that? So that I know there's a lot to consider, and we've also got this in light of situations like Air New Zealand, who have announced 85% of their international capacity is shut down, which obviously leads to a huge financial implication, and potentially a massive layoff of staff. So we know that there are commercial realities that impact individual people's lives. So I'm not I think if we have a look, then New Zealand organisations are really working to support their staff and their customers in the best ways that they possibly can. And right now, we're incredibly reliant on the likes of Spark and Vodafone, Vocus, and so on to support how New Zealand needs to operate, and a lot of that will be remote working. We've heard in China about challenges with their situation where a lot of people working from home, internet connectivity was impacted by the heavy loads. Apparently a lot of that was gaming, interestingly enough, but I think businesses and individuals are probably a little bit more prepared, and they're expecting to do some work from home, and probably got devices. Although that's a challenge, and it's been interesting as I've been visiting different firms, chatting through what's going to work for them. Personally, I've operated off laptops and so on for so many years that you sometimes forget actually there's still a large chunk of the workforce that operates off a desktop PC.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there are going to be all sorts of challenges to be addressed. We don't have the flow through of inventory of new products. So if an organisation wants to suddenly put 100 laptops into hands of staff, they may not be able to get hold of them, or they want to provide monitors so that their staff can be at a higher level of productivity from home. Again, they might not be able to get hold of the devices they need. So it's rather challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's a lot of product that we use, or software that we use, actually allow us to able to remote in from any type of computer or laptop. Such as Microsoft Teams and etc. It just kind of make the life a little bit easier than versus the past. Which is a good start.
Yeah, well, I noticed Microsoft with Teams have been offering a sort of a free level for non-customers. I think Zoom have been doing something similar. Possibly Slack as well, but I've certainly seen at least 2 out of those 3 mentioned have an offering that they're putting in the market, and there's an aspect of this that puts a load on their systems. In fact, I saw Microsoft sent through an announcement saying actually they're changing some of the regularity that certain things update in terms of chats and whatnot, and they're possibly dropping down the resolution of some of their video
to maintain the bandwidth
calls, so that actually there's enough to go around. And this is Microsoft who run one of the largest cloud environments on the planet, and they're making changes to be able to balance it. So you can imagine the sort of pressure that this might put on really internet infrastructure, cloud computing infrastructure, and servers and the like, right?
Yeah, and it'd be interesting of what those our companies, the infrastructure, what they're gonna do, what their plan is, and I'm pretty sure they probably already start planning right now, right?
Yeah. Now, how's it been for your team at OPPO here in New Zealand? What have you been able to do, and what is your mix of sort of infrastructure and so on. You mentioned Microsoft Teams.
We're obviously a global company, so we do work with our Chinese counterpart, and we use Zoom as well. Which is another good alternative, which has been using. And in the last couple of months, obviously, with China, was one of the countries that affected the most. We were able to use Zoom very effectively, which is really good to see. And they were able to handle a lot of meetings. It's almost daily, actually.
And I can imagine.
Which is surprisingly worked really well for us as well. But locally now, obviously, now we're coming to winter, so we like any other local business, we're coming up with all our precautions measure ourselves, stress testing our ability to work remotely as well. But luckily, majority of our team are on laptops. They all have the Zoom. They all have Microsoft Team, and we are doing a random day where we're gonna send people home saying that we're working from home day, just to really stress test our ability to work remotely.
Well, that's a good approach to make it sort of random, so no one knows when it's going to happen, and you have to be prepared. And it's certainly a discussion we've been having. It can be quite common to have everybody having a laptop, but a lot of people don't take their laptop home at night
or monitor.
Right? Those sorts of things. So what are you going to do? You need to work from home, and you can't get into the office.
You got it.
There's definitely important things to really be putting in place and communicating, and making sure you've got that buy-in across the organisation. For some people, they've got a big hefty laptop, and I don't know, they ride an e-scooter to work. That might not be a particularly good mix, right? Or whatever it is. I know e-scooters aren't ideal if you've got a lot of weight to carry. Certainly, if you've got to take a monitor home and a laptop, that's probably going to be a little bit hard on your
absolutely.
on the scooter.
And they keep telling me that e-scooter is really light, and it wasn't the case. It's probably one of the heaviest thing to carry as well.
Look, so much going on that this COVID-19 front. There was an announcement today, actually, from Spark New Zealand around Spark Sport.
I saw that.
And they're making Spark Sport free through into May. And look, this is kind of fascinating, because the whole idea of sport during this time, it's just being massively disrupted, and it's not like that. We're used to disruption, and this new things come along. But COVID-19 is disrupting safety around sport. So we're seeing a
lot of cancellations.
Most of it sort of basically being cancelled, one form or another. Formula One, whatever. And I would have thought, well, Formula One, certainly to a degree, when you look at the vehicles, you're those participants are keeping distance from each other, but there's all the teams and so on, and then audiences, if you allow live viewing and so on. This stuff is all getting knocked out, and I think there's a very high presumption that the Olympics will be cancelled or postponed, even though I don't think we've had any announcement down that track just yet. Which of course creates an opportunity for esport, right? And I haven't delved too deeply into it, but I certainly saw comments around Formula One, and of course part of the way that they practice their races is to do that in a virtual type environment anyway. Them participating in sort of esport variant of Formula One,
that could be fun.
Totally makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
And you could keep television audiences entertained, etc. So this could really be that massive rise from for esport, I would imagine.
Absolutely, but I think what we couldn't discount as well is me myself also a sports fan. I love football, and one thing that we do when you're like sports fan is that you don't mind watching some of the replay from the glory days
Yeah,
of your teams,
absolutely.
you know, and
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing, right? Or if you like boxing, you see some of like, I don't know, top 10 highlights from Mike Tyson or something like that, something similar to that. And I think there's a lot of content to be played, whether it's a live events or just some of the previous highlights from your favorite sports as well.
Yep, definitely. And look, there might be other things. There's some really good sport docos and things like that that possibly can be pulled in. Now that might be easier for some some broadcasters than others, but I can imagine Sky have got a really big content base that might be the sort of tack that they would take. But yeah, I mean, pleasing to see that this sort of stuff is getting some thought, and good on Spark for making their offering free. And look, even better if they can maybe pull in some sport type movies and docos and things like that to keep people entertained in the meantime. Now, that's probably a lot easier to think up that idea than to actually deliver on it. So, just throwing these sorts up there. But I realise licensing and all those things usually is negotiated over long periods, and you can't just do that at the drop of a hat. But look, good on them, and but I would imagine that Sky have got quite a strong content base to pull from, and with their shakiness financially, their share price sort of dropped. It's just nuts how low their share price has dropped over the last year. I think it's, if I were to guess, and I don't have I'm not going to refer back to the exact numbers, but over the last 12 to 18 months. I remember them being around $1.20. Maybe that was this time last year, not sure exactly. Now they're around at about 31 cents or something.
Very tough competition.
So it's I mean, look, it's difficult times, but there are very smart people at Sky, and there's smart people at Spark. So I'm sure on both fronts they're really going to be thinking about how they can look after their client base and and keep going longer term, because it'd be a tragedy if we ended up without the services that we have today.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. Now on to other topics. I know there's probably over the next few weeks there will be, and there still are things that we could be talking about on the on that COVID-19 front, but there are still other things going on in the world. So I picked up, this was a interesting headline that I saw last week, and just wanted to give it a quick mention, because it's sort of it's a challenging one to address. So the headline from the New Zealand Herald was US to hold tech firms accountable for spread of, and then they're basically talking about really dodgy imagery in terms of child abuse imagery. And this to me is a really challenging one. How can you hold a technology firm, be it a Facebook or a Google or Twitter, completely accountable for all of their content, unless that gets viewed by human eyes. And I guess my view on it, look, it's really interesting that that governments are pushing down this track, because there is certainly wisdom to balancing what we put online, but there are also limitations of just how good artificial intelligence is right now.
Yep.
And I just don't think we can necessarily police everything. And I mean, this will just be an interesting one to watch and see how these sort of organisations handle it. We've certainly been looking back, the Facebooks and Googles of this world. They're not able to entirely sort of root out footage of the terrorism act that took place in Christchurch, and we're a year down the track, and it's hopefully not the whole thing in its entirety, but look, this stuff is actually really hard to get the AI perfect, so it can pick up stuff that when our human eyes see it, we can recognise what it is, but to get a AI to cover that in every single circumstance when this content often has been really modified and tweaked to try and trick the AI, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a hard subject to talk about, and I think it's something that we need to improve on going forward.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, this is the journey we're in with a connected world online. We've got to keep working on the big challenges, and that's certainly one of them. Now. I'm just looking at other thing on the agenda. There's something else there. I think we're probably not going to quite squeeze in, but I'm keen to hear a little bit more around what's happening in the world of OPPO. It was great to have an opportunity to attend OPPO's event in Shenzhen in December. So. Thank you to yourself and the OPPO New Zealand team for facilitating that. And look, I find it fascinating and really valuable to actually get a little bit closer to what happens from a production standpoint, and to really wear a lot of what it is that goes in behind the scenes. And so look, it was the second time I'd been up in Shenzhen to have a look at a manufacturing plant, seeing a little bit of what happens in terms of some of these mechanical tests that smartphones are put through to test just how robust are they. They're getting dropped continuously for hours and hours on end from there's actually a whole lot of stuff that goes on there to prove the robustness of the phones. Of course, despite that, clumsy people like me still manage to damage the phones. But I hope we're progressing in terms of how good we get with glass and making glass that has non-glass like properties, and that it will let a phone bounce without cracking.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
on.
And actually, myself is quite surprised when I actually first look at how much OPPO actually put into the stress tests, because they really take the quality very, very seriously actually. And then and at first we couldn't quite understand what is the after effects of it, but we're seeing it now in the last 3 years. Our return rate has been way below the New Zealand market return rate as well.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're sitting at under 1%, and I think New Zealand return rate is actually at 3%. So it's really showed that the investment that we made on this stress quality test on dropping stuff is coming to fruition, because it helped the retailer not to actually process this repairs in the shop, and give them more time to actually sell rather than processing repair. And then as much of a retailer actually can appreciate, it's actually take a lot of time to do admin on repair as well. So I see it's a good thing that we focus on that, ultimately benefit just the customer, but also our customer who actually sell them as well. So we've got the new OPPO Find X2, and it was, I guess, was it towards 2 years ago the original Find X came out? So, I mean, should we give this a test in the office and just see if we throw it against the wall what that'll do? Or sure, I mean, we can. I mean, we can give it a go. But also,
no, I'm not. I'm totally not game. Knowing that there's not another one here that I'll be able to play with.
I think we can. And I think the good thing about something different we do, we Find X2 Pro, we do something different with Find X was we focus on innovation at that time. But this time around on Find X2 Pro, we kind of understanding what user wants and kind of like maximize the performance on that. And if you probably notice, we kind of removed the pop-up camera technology on it.
Yeah, so the Find X was sort of the first approaches, and the Find X2 has a pretty nice, tidy little black hole in it for the camera and the screen, but it's pretty slick. But it's a little bit of a different approach in terms of what to focus on from that, keeping at the forefront and innovative new things in the phone.
It is, and I think it's because we listen to our customer, and a lot of customer who purchase flagship, they do always asking us about the waterproof and the dust resistance.
Yes,
and hence why we can't produce at the moment a pop-up camera with the IP68 rating.
Yes.
But it seems that those customers who want to purchase flagship won't prefer the IP68 more. Hence why we decided to focus on that rather than the pop-up camera at this time around.
Yeah, I think that's a good move. And the other thing that I guess is that there's no the headphone jack is gone. That seems to be something that's pretty common with when you're trying to deliver a waterproof and dustproof phone. You're really trying to take away as many of those things as possible. Really, you've got to expose a speaker, a microphone, and somewhere to plug in and charge. There's a USB-C port, but other than that, your phone is pretty locked down in terms of areas where any liquid can get in, right?
Yeah, and I think the headphone jack. I know a lot of people, especially the audiophiles, still love headphone jack.
Yeah.
But if you see the amount of uptakes now on the true wireless headphones, it's insane. It's going at a rapid rate. That is probably one of the fastest growing category in IoT.
Yes,
and I think people start embracing, and the technology are there to compensate headphone jack as well, or actually as an alternative to headphone jack.
Yeah. And look, you can still get a converter and plug something into the USB-C port as well, can't you? Looking at the Find X2 Pro, which is what's being launched here in New Zealand. I haven't been playing around with it for a whole lot of days. But the bit that I guess sort of stood out for me is the 10 times zoom, and just trying that out again now. It's it's pretty impressive. I'm not sure what's the optical. Do you know what the optical sort of zoom level is to deliver that 10 times zoom? Because that's kind of a hybrid type zoom. Isn't it?
It is. So it's 5.
Oh goodness. Yep.
It's actually 5 times optical that we have, and we make it a hybrid 10 times with the software that we have in it. I think it's actually the same type of lens that we have on Reno 10 times zoom, but it's a second generation software that we have to enhance the ability to zoom, the stability of it, just to make sure that the experience on zooming is actually much better than the Reno 10 times zoom. But I think the most exciting part for the camera, actually the customized 48 megapixel sensor that we have in there. It is actually the largest sensor for a 48 megapixel. It means that taking photo at night is actually going to be a little bit more a breeze rather than a normal 48 megapixel.
And that seems to be the area where I guess we're seeing across the the top phones, the flagship phones from certainly the bigger brands. We're really seeing a great amount of competition there, and it's good to see OPPO have really taken that aspect pretty seriously in terms of doing night type shots that are useful, and giving those higher levels of zoom, and certainly looking at the likes of the S20 from Samsung and other vendors, we're seeing a lot of activity in that space. Obviously, it varies from person to person how important that is, but for me, if I can have a camera, really good camera in my pocket, I find that incredibly helpful. So
I
it's
agree.
great.
And do you by any chance have pets or children? If you do, one thing that I'm excited about this particular part is we have all pixel focus on it. It's something new for us.
Yeah.
So what it means that every pixel on the picture is a focus point.
Right.
So if you have, it's like me, who has a 2-year-old daughter who run around like a little monkey, taking a picture and focusing is really hard.
Yeah.
And the all pixel focus actually help us to actually to make sure that focus at all time, even though it's a big movement or at night time. And I believe there's a 97% success rate on focusing at any time with that particular camera as well, which is I'm quite excited about.
Yeah. Well, I focused pretty quickly. I found, so it was pretty snappy on getting into focus, which is is good. But that's something I've noticed. With the pre-release handsets and software, usually there's a little bit of tweaking over the over that period until the final software comes out, and even then there are often sort of iterations post launch.
Yep.
Now, one thing we have been seeing, of course, is Android 10 and the OPPO Find X2 Pro comes with Android 10.
Yep.
Is that something across many of your other handsets that are going to be getting Android 10 updates? What's the sort of status of that side? Because I know it has varied from brand to brand. Even in terms of the security updates getting through Android, how long those take and so on. How's the Android 10 sort of upgrades looking?
It's definitely in the radar. It's actually at the moment we have a schedule to release those Android 10 for the previous generation, so like the Reno 10 times zoom, and I think it's all the way till R17 Pro.
Right.
So the local testing team is now working as quickly as they're possible to go through our new releases product, which is the Find X2 Pro. It's our first device with 5G, so it's take longer than expected. Especially with all the situation currently happening around the world. However, our priority after the Find X2 Pro to make sure that we focus on the releases of Android 10 on the previous devices. So just watch this space. I think we definitely want to keep our customer updated on those, because it's always nice to have the latest and greatest, especially when you spend a bit of money on it as well.
And I think, look, there's always an aspect of the newer versions in terms of security capabilities that are always important. And is there a fixed update schedule now on the security updates from across the OPPO devices?
We do it monthly. So we work with our carrier on a monthly basis. So we send them what we call the maintenance release, which is included Google security update as well. And I think it's a hygiene factor now for Android users. That's what they're looking for, and we just continue to find ways to improve the speed of bringing those to the market as well.
I think that's something that I think is important. It's the quicker those come out, the safer everybody is.
I agree.
Right?
And
so,
look, I'm also a consumer, and I also love my gadget. And when another brand have an update, you kind of feel a little bit of FOMO a little bit as well. It's like, hey, when's my update coming? And hence why I always encourage my team to kind of like, hey guys, we need to make sure we take care of our customer on updates. No, that's good. Now, so you're launching here in New Zealand the OPPO Find X2. Is it around May, the time frame? What's the exact launch date? So OPPO Find X2 Pro, it will be around May. They'll be launching. So we are working closely now with the carrier in New Zealand to make sure it's tested for 5G. And it's going to be our first 5G products, and one of many. So we're looking to make sure that we bring a broadest range of 5G this year. It's quite exciting for us, for the consumers, but also for the carrier.
How much storage will be in the product? In the Find X2 Pro.
It's actually 512 gigabytes.
I just wanted to check that because I noticed that in this device that it had half a terabyte, and for that to be like the standard in a device,
it's crazy.
I was like, no, surely not. I mean, I know it keeps getting bigger, but I just can't think of a flagship where that's just been the standard offering. I guess with some other brands, they've taken different approaches, and if you pay an extra X amount, then you get a bigger storage. Personally, I love having large amounts of storage, just go nuts with taking videos and photos, syncing podcasts, audio books, etc. So that's actually stunning.
We had to, and I think it's the right thing to do. I mean, we had a conversation about it, and especially last year when I speak to a lot of our influencer about taking photo, and especially taking photo in the RAW file. And this is one of the things that we can do in this particular phone. They're taking 12-bit RAW file on the camera, and with that, the file size is massive. So we want to make sure we have storage that be able to cater for that. And I think we made the right decision with choosing the 512 gig.
I mean, storing photos in a RAW format is probably reasonably unusual. Most people don't need that, but I think also the more storage you give somebody, the less chance there is that they're going to get stuck running out of storage. Look, I don't usually on the show dive too much into these sort of tech specs, but that one jumped out to me. And also you've got 12 gigs of RAM in there, which is pretty solid. And the I think the other features, because this is it going to be as a single SIM phone, as a 5G phone? Is that the?
It is.
That's probably the one of the few bits that we get used to from brands like OPPO is having dual SIM type options, but that's not an option here with the 5G handset at this stage, right?
I think
nice that'll launch out here in New Zealand.
So at the moment it's 1899.
Okay.
And that's it us where we're trying to enter the premium market with this and with the premium specs. And we just want to make sure that even though it's a premium segment, we want to make sure that it's priced at the little bit stay true to our premium with the price tag, I guess. And hopefully that will resonate good with our customers as well.
Yeah. Now, one thing I didn't try, and I don't remember reading it, so it's maybe is not packed in amongst the other features. If you plug this into a USB-C type monitor, is this sort of thing you could do a little bit of work from home on? Does it do that?
Not a desktop mode or something like that.
Nothing quite like that just yet.
No, not just yet. Yeah.
Is that in the works for OPPO?
I can't comment just right now. But, it may be.
No, fair enough. We don't want you announcing something that hasn't been announced anywhere else in the world. There would be some trouble, and you might not be able to come and talk to me again.
Absolutely.
No, that's good. No, I'm always interested in that capability. I mean, I know it's a real sort of it is a niche thing. Yeah. But at the current time, it's one of those those things I've been discussing with a few folks. Is look, this could be a way to facilitate working from home if you happen to have that type of capability.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a handset. That's really cool. Now, anything else in the OPPO front we should be aware of? There were a couple of interesting things that I saw in China. There was a VR headset, which was sort of a prototype product that was really cool. It looked a little bit like Microsoft sort of HoloLens, a variation on that in terms of its look, but it was a prototype, wasn't a sort of finished product. But certainly, there was a bit of software that you were able to try out there. There was a prototype handset that had a camera behind the screen without a punch hole. That was pretty cool to be able to try out, and I think that's one of the areas where for those who very closely follow what's going on in smartphones, OPPO likes to be very close, if not right at the forefront on a lot of these, testing out new technologies. I think OPPO is is known to have the fastest charging of any smartphone in the market, right? And it's the same again I think with the Find X2 Pro. But is there anything else? I think the smartphone, I remember reading US media saying it was only released in Asia, but New Zealand's included in in the mix, aren't we?
We are definitely. So our goal, Open New Zealand Anywhere this year around is around the 5G, enabling 5G. And one of the key strategies around, again, having the broadest 5G range on the devices to help that adaptation in the country on 5G products, but network as well. But to kind of enhance the experience, we're looking to the IoT products. So that's around the CPE products. So if you later on in the future,
what's this? I know what a CPE is, but not everyone will know what that is.
It's just like a modem at home that you plug into your SIM card instead of a fixed wire.
So that becomes your router for your internet connection.
For your internet, it's becoming your router, become your internet or your gateway, and just no messing around of installing cables outside your house. It just make it easier. And I think with 5G, the speed will be pretty good enough to be able to cater a whole home.
Is there a pricing on that for New Zealand market just
Not yet. It's still too early, but we are working with the carrier in New Zealand to see what we can do in that space.
Fantastic.
We have, you said the VR AR is just experimenting with that. We have smartwatch that we announced in China.
Yeah, that was what I was meaning to say before. I don't know whether I ended up saying smartphone instead of smartwatch, but the smartwatch. So what's happening on that front?
So China launched already, and I think for the other part of the world is going to be announced very shortly. I think New Zealand is also going to be part of the second phase outside China. And we actually very, very excited for it because it's going to be there will be an eSIM variant as well, which I'm quite excited about. And I think a lot of the carriers now quite quickly adapting to eSIM, and that's one part that can't wait to announce to New Zealand customers.
Great. Oh, that's very very pleasing. Good stuff. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate that. You've taken some time out to come and be on the show. I think it's part of the New Zealand Tech Podcast format. We like to hear from people right across the technology sector, and certainly getting an update on what's happening in the world of OPPO is all part of that. So thanks for filling in a few gaps.
No problem at all. Actually, it's been pleasing to attend the podcast.
Great,
no
excellent.
Thanks for having me here.
Well, thanks everybody for listening in to the New Zealand Tech Podcast this week. Now we will, of course, be back again with another episode next week. And just a reminder that you can, as well as listening to the audio podcast, you can keep up to date with our updates across social media. I think a few more people subscribed last week, so feel free to jump in and subscribe there. We tend to be streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook and on Periscope most weeks now. We try and make the episode available live as we're recording for those that want to be right at the forefront and get the freshest taste of NZ Tech Podcast rather than having to wait and listen to it while you're commuting to work in the morning or at the gym in the morning and so on. So definitely feel free to follow us on those channels. And then the other thing that I should mention is our Podcasts NZ channels. And if you go to podcasts.nz, you will find a whole bunch of our other shows. The newest is called This Climate Business, which has actually just launched today, so it's still making its way onto some of the podcast platforms, but it should be there already on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and on a bunch of the players. So this is a really good show. It augments the other show that we have that really relates to the environment and climate, which is the electric vehicle podcast. So I think those who are interested in these areas will enjoy that show. And it's hosted by award-winning journalist and entrepreneur Vincent Heringer, founder of a bunch of media outlets, including Idealog, which have just announced that they've just published their last printed edition, and that will be electronic from now on. But yeah, he's been involved in a whole bunch of media, and certainly is an absolutely awesome podcast host. So that one's well worth a listen. So that's called This Climate Business, and you'll find that alongside a lot of our other New Zealand shows at podcasts.nz. And of course, we've got some of our more globally oriented shows, such as the Mobile Tech Podcast, up at worldpodcasts.com. So that's it for us this week. Thanks everyone for listening in. We'll catch you again next week. All right, see ya. You're hitting stop on that one.